Hi, guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Vijeta, and today we shall be doing information and communication technology. It's the part two with the MCQs and explanations. So, last time we stopped here where we talked about the primary purpose of a supercomputer. Now, let us go further. Which of the following organizations is responsible for publishing the biannual list of the world's fastest supercomputers? The answer is top 500. See, the top 500 organization, it actually publishes a biannual list. Biannual means twice a year of the world's fastest supercomputers, and it ranks them based on their performance. You know, in the high performance LINPACK HPL benchmark. That's a benchmark. It's called high performance LINPACK HPL benchmark. Now, this list is an important indicator of the advancements in high performance computing technology, obviously, and it actually serves like a reference or a guide for researchers, organizations, and governments which wish to have the best supercomputers at their disposal. So, it's like an guide or book for people who actually want to know which supercomputers are the best supercomputers. They actually rank the supercomputers based on their features and based on their efficiency. So, this organization, Top 500, is like that only. It's like that, yellow page books that we used to have before. And yeah, so that is that. In the context of different types of computers, which of the following terms refer to a system that can switch between analog and digital processing as needed? It's hybrid computers. See, hybrid computers can switch between analog and digital processing if you require, that is. And depending on the specific task or application, they do that. Now, this kind of flexibility actually allows them to combine all the advantages that an analog and a digital computer can provide, because both of those systems have their own advantages. And this makes them very suitable for various purposes, like a car with, uh, petrol and both diesel. It actually has some features. It's a versatile car. In that way, hybrid computers also have analog and digital both features, and it can help you because that could provide you with the flexibility and both the advantages of having an analog and a digital computing system can actually make things easier, make tasks more easier to handle, which is the reason why hybrid computers are the computers which can switch between both analog and digital processing. Mainframe computers are often used by large organizations for centralized data processing and handling multiple concurrent users. Now, mainframes offer robust processing power, extensive memory, and high reliability, suitable for demanding enterprise level applications. See, mainframe computers are very much favored by large organizations because they have that ability to handle centralized data processing, because large organizations do need that, and they can actually support multiple users concurrently at the same time because they have their robust processing power, they have a good processing power, they have extensive large memory and high reliability, which is very important if you are running a large organization and a lot of people are working under a centralized system and you don't want your data to crash or the processors to slow down. You don't want that. So, multiple organizations they actually rely on mainframe computers because of all these features that mainframe computers have. So, yeah, that these are the advantages of mainframe computers. Which type of computer is not designed for a single user? Obviously, mainframe computers, but microcomputers, which are your PCs, mini computers, and supercomputers, are. See, mainframe computers are not designed for individual users. because they serve large organizations and they handle centralized data processing. Like you have those tasks like banking, insurance, multinational companies. All of these organizations, all of these companies actually use mainframe computers. Mainframe computers are very powerful, you should know that. They're very powerful machines and they're used by high end institutions because they have to manage a lot of data, tremendous amount of data processing. They have those features like parallel processing, like or some processing, a lot of processings are going on simultaneously. Those kind of things, you understand? Large scale processing. And they have a lot of a lot of storage capacity because of the kind of work they are handling. So that is why mainframe computers are not for individual users. Mainframe computers are for large organizations. Microcomputers, mini computers, and supercomputers. Yeah, even supercomputers. They are for individual purposes. Ah, so that is that. Mini computer is a mid-size multi-processing system capable of supporting up to 250 users simultaneously. Yes, mini computer is a mid-size multi-processing system. It's a middle-size system, okay? And it is capable of supporting up to around 250 users at the same time, simultaneously. Because and that is why it is used for research and development purposes, R&D purposes. Don't get confused if they ask which computers are used for R&D purposes. R&D means research and development. So they are mini computers. Who is the inventor of artificial intelligence? Very important and very contemporary question. Not very contemporary actually, but yeah, they could ask you. John McCarthy. John McCarthy is widely recognized as the father of AI and he actually coined the term artificial intelligence. Which year is often considered the birth year of artificial intelligence? It's 1956. That is why I said it's not a contemporary question, although we are seeing AI in its not in its full-fledged form, but mostly in its all its glory. Maybe there is more to come right now. So, in that sense, you can say it's a contemporary question. However, it was actually its birthday is actually in 1956. It came to existence in 1956. The Dartmouth Conference in 1956. It is actually regarded as the starting point of the field of artificial intelligence. And there, artificial intelligence was coined. So, you can say 1956 is the birth year of artificial intelligence because there it came into being. The term was coined, things started flowing, and what we now have is years and years of speculation, work, designs put by researchers, engineers, scholars. So, yeah, from 1956, AI has been churning up in labs and places, and now we have it in most of its glory. Anyways, which of the following statements about the Turing test is true? I have included the true statement, which is the Turing test actually evaluates a computer's ability to exhibit human like intelligence in natural language conversations. See, the Turing test was actually proposed by Alan Turing, just remember that, and it assesses a computer's ability to mimic human like intelligence in natural language conversations. And it challenges the boundaries of machine intelligence in that way because you are making a computer mimic human intelligence. When you talk to right now, you talk to Chat GPT and AI, and you can see that it is able to understand you. The human connection is able to build there. I mean, when you talk to like Chat GPT like that only, sometimes asking them to solve a problem, the human like connection, the human like response that they have. It kind of shows that the Turing test has, you know, given some of its fruits, because the Turing test actually evaluates the computer's ability to exhibit human like intelligence in the natural language conversations that humans have. And maybe it is due to this that now we have an advanced technology where computers can actually understand human language, human voice, and convert it into a text, or convert a text into like there are so many variations of human like intelligence that can be seen in computers right now. And it is owing to these kind of tests and other stuff that we have come to such glory of AI and human intelligence in computers. Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant are examples of virtual assistants powered by artificial intelligence. Virtual assistants use natural language processing and machine learning techniques to understand and respond to user queries. See, virtual assistants like you have Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant, they have AI technologies, which is natural language processing. As I told you, you say something and they process that language. And machine learning, they have natural language processing and machine learning, which helps them to understand and respond to individual user queries. Each user gets a different response. You can try this by yourself if you are a little bit sad or something. The AI assistant will respond to you accordingly because they have these technologies, natural language processing and machine learning, which makes it possible. So, that is something. Which of the following statements about neural networks is true? I have included the right statement, which is neural networks can automatically learn from data and improve their performance over time. See, actually, it's not neutral, it's neural. That's a small typo. Neural networks are capable of automatic learning. That is why the term neurons, you can remember by that, because they have that data, and through training processes and from data, they adjust their internal parameters so that they can improve their performance on various tasks that the user gives without any explicit or external programming. They can just collect data and they can improve their performance on their own. You don't have to do much with neural networks, which makes them very efficient for users. So, yeah, this is the technology of neural networks where they can just improve themselves without any external programming or any explicit programming. Which component of the CPU is responsible for temporary storing data and instructions during processing? Cache memory. Now, cache memory is a small, high speed memory unit, and it is located in the CPU, close to the CPU or sometimes inside the CPU. And it's actually used for temporarily storing, frequently accessed data and instructions for faster processing. You see, sometimes you open Facebook or Instagram and the window appears without you even having internet sometimes. That's the cache memory because it has temporarily stored, the frequently accessed data and instructions so that you can have, faster processing. You can get the fast response from your system. That's because of your cache memory, which is the reason why a lot of people keep cleaning their cache memory so that too much load on the system doesn't interrupt the processing of your mobiles or computers. That's the reason. What is the purpose of the control unit CU in the CPU? To control the flow of data and instructions within the CPU. See, the control unit is responsible for coordinating and controlling the flow of data and all the instructions which are there in the CPU. It kind of gets the instructions from memory, decodes them, and then executes them. So, all of this is done by the control unit. It does all the work of getting the instructions, decoding the instructions, and then executing those instructions. So, yeah, very important feature of the CPU. What is the primary function of the arithmetic logic unit ALU within the CPU? To process data and perform calculations. See, the arithmetic logic unit is actually responsible for performing all the arithmetic, which is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and logical, which is and or not operations on data. From the name only, you can understand what arithmetic logic unit must do. All the logical and arithmetic stuff that is there. So, yeah, that is something. So, with this small lecture, I conclude. No, I'm not concluding the unit, but yeah, I conclude today's lecture. If you liked it, please give it a like, share, subscribe, and I will meet you all in the next video. Thank you.